Live from Orlando, Florida, you're listening to the Orlando Magic HQ podcast, the voice of Magic fans. Join us every week for a unique fan perspective on all of the latest Magic news and updates. The show starts now.
What's up, Magic fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Orlando Magic HQ podcast, brought to you by the Believe Podcast Network. We're your hosts, Al, myself, Anthony. In today's episode, we are joined by our main man, Steven from Close Up. And the Magic just finished off the season, man. The season's over. Playoff. Unfortunately, the Magic dropped to the defending NBA champions, Boston Celtics, in a Game 5 series. And now we are officially into the postseason. So I want to jump right into it. Guys, welcome. Al, I'm going to send it to you first. If we are looking into this season in its totality, including the postseason, if we were to put on a scale rating of 1 to 10, where are you at with how you view and how you consider the season as a success on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, man, I think that when you look at the entire season, it definitely was not what we expected, right? We anticipated the team to be a top 3, top 4 seed in the East. We hoped to get past the first round of the playoffs this year. Unfortunately, due to many things, injuries primarily, that didn't happen. But from my perspective, when you look back and really analyze it from a realistic perspective, I would give it a 6. I still wanted us to take it to a Game 6 against the Celtics. That would have made it a 7 in my eyes. The fact that we didn't, though, does not discredit the team from what they accomplished. They did an amazing job fighting through all the adversity, making it to the playoffs, giving the Celtics a really hard-fought series. I truly believe there was not a single game that we felt like, man, we got blown out. Yeah, Game 4, when you look at the score, 120-89, you might think we lost that game from the beginning. No. It took Paulo getting 3 weird fouls in the third quarter to kind of kick us out of the game and not have a chance to compete anymore. But outside of that, the team fought every single night. It wasn't pretty. It was a rough season. I think Coach mostly said it today. It felt like 5 seasons in one. It truly did. But ultimately, the team fought hard. They made it to the playoffs, and they found a way to again, gain experience against a team like the Celtics in the playoffs. That is something that they can take now to the offseason, come back next year as a better team. And again, we'll see what happens in the offseason. But I truly believe that they will learn a lot from this experience and be a better team as a result. So, conclusion, a 6 for me.
Yeah, I think that the season. So if you haven't already done so, the Magic they did a bunch of exit interviews, so you can hear direct verbiage from Jeff Weltman, Coach Mose, Franz, Paulo, the whole team. And later on in this episode, we're going to jump more in depth in terms of some of the words from Jeff Weltman that were really eye-opening into their strategy and their plan going into the season. But yeah, just to kind of echo it, man, it did feel like multiple seasons in one. There was a lot of highs, a lot of lows. It's hard to call this season a success simply because last season it way exceeded expectations, right? Magic went straight into the playoffs, didn't have to fight their way into the play-in. But I remember us having that conversation where last year's expectation was to make it into the play-in, right? We obviously know that this is a completely different basketball team when you have a healthy Jalen Suggs, when you have a healthy Mo Wagner, and you have your core players playing more than 90 minutes together in the whole season, right? So from that point, even with injuries involved, I'm a lot lower on the spectrum. I would give it about a 5, just because you kind of have to deal with the injuries. The Magic haven't had a healthy season in a really, really long time. Injuries is just a part of the game.
Year.
Except for last year. Besides that,
outside of that, outlier.
Outside of that, but in all reality, it's just where it's at. You get us on such a high last season, and this season, there's so many different things that you can kind of point to, because even after Paulo went down, like Paulo put us at a high really early on. He dropped his first 50 bucket, then he ended up getting his injury. Somehow Franz Wagner got the same exact injury. So those are just a lot of things that were really disappointing. Some of it was at times a hard watch. I'm happy that this all happened because I believe we're finally going to get to an off season where we're going to start seeing more of a positive momentum. But yeah, I'm lower on the spectrum. I'd give it a 5. Steven, what do you think when we take a look at how you view the season as a success?
It's funny because I'm on the opposite side. I actually think it's a little bit higher. I'm giving it a 7, and I'll give some context why. If you look at yes, we all want it to be a home court team this year. But when you look at this team, right, with Paulo missing 35 games, Franz missing 25 games, Jalen Suggs missing half the season come January, Mo Wagner missing the half the season from the end of December. Those are our top 4 offensive players this season, and they all miss significant amount of time. And if you put that in perspective to other teams that had significant injuries that were projected to be playoff teams, I'm talking Philadelphia 76ers, I'm talking the New Orleans Pelicans, both teams that were, the Pelicans, like we kind of like, you might question that, but they added Dejounte Murray, they had Brandon Ingram, they had healthy Zion I going into the season. They all had injuries. And both those teams didn't even make the play-in. Like, just straight up, they didn't have an identity strong enough to battle through those injuries, where the Magic, even with all the injuries that they had, they maintained a top 3 defense the entire season. Maybe at one point they might have slipped to 4, but for the most part, they were top 3 defense the majority of the season. And that kept them in the standings, granted a little bit of grace being in the Eastern Conference, but that kept them in enough standings to be a team that is fighting for a playoff spot. They started playing some of their best basketball at the end of the season, which is the most important time to be playing their best basketball. And I think they went on like 14, like in the last 14 games, I think they won 10 out of the last 4. And that's like, I think that's just a testament to the culture and the adversity they had to go through to get to that point. And I don't think, like, if you put that same situation on last year's team that had so much success with their health, I don't think they have the same outcome as they did this year. Like they definitely are not making the playoffs last year with this type of injuries that they did this year, because it's just like they had to grow through last year, which built them up to be able to go through it this year. And I think that is really, really important for a young team and young stars and Paulo and Franz and Jalen, and even a young coach to have to go through to maintain that level of competitiveness. And then when okay, yes, we lost to the Celtics in 5, right? Hypothetically speaking, if the Celtics were fully healthy, which they were not in this playoff series, like Drew Holiday missed a significant amount of time. Jason Tatum missed a game or 2 and he was not healthy. Jaylen Brown was banged up. Like, if Kristaps Porzingis had fucking probably a concussion, if we dial that, if we put both teams healthy, they're the reigning champions that had a top 5 offense and defense. The Magic were a top 3 offense and a bottom, 5 defense offense, or sorry, top 3 defense and a bottom 5 offense, bottom 2 offense. Like, the Magic still probably would have been lucky to get 7 games out of that matchup, in my perspective, if both teams were really healthy. And so when I look at that, and then I think about, okay, what about our main guys that were healthy and played? Paulo played better than he did last year. He averaged 29 points per game over the 5 games and truly was a phenomenal player in every game. His efficiency wasn't as great, but he also didn't have players hitting. His efficiency will get better when the team is better. And then you look at Franz, who was not very good he was very streaky. He had 1 or 2 good games in last year's playoffs, but he was pretty solid in every single one of these games. All 5, I think he averaged 25 points per game in this year's playoffs. And dude, he grew from last year to this year. And so, yeah, would I have loved to see a longer series in the first round? Absolutely. Would I have loved for them to have home court advantage? Absolutely. But when I put all the context in, and try and dissect it a little bit more piece of the pie and not the whole pie, I feel like I want to give them a little bit more grace. And just like, I think just the culture they built allowed them to maintain competitiveness with all the injuries. And then seeing our core players, the two main guys we really give a shit about, play the way they did in the playoffs. Like, I can't look at that and say this season was not a success. I can't look at the playoffs and say it wasn't good for them to go through that. It was great for them to experience that. You know, Anthony Black, if he's on this team next year, he got battle tested. He knows now what it's going to be like in the future to get to that level. And so, excuse me. Yeah, I just think it was a pretty positive season despite all the downfall that we all felt as a fandom and as a journalist group covering this team. You know, there was a lot of downs, but I think all things considered, I think there was success within the season. I wouldn't say it's a successful season. I'll say there was success within the season, and that's why I feel like I'm giving it like a 7. And a 7's like a C, in my opinion, like a C plus maybe. And
yeah, I think a 7 would be a 70, which would definitely be a C. I think that for me, like this whole season, you just stamp it as you know, red injury. Like that if there's one word to describe what the season was, that's just what it was. And for me, that's really the defining reason why I would give it a 5. But I definitely see your point giving it a 7. Now, my thing is, what I do like about the season, and some elements that kind of stand out to me, is the fact that we got a chance to see Franz without Paulo. Then we get a chance to see Paulo without Franz. There was a moment where we kind of felt like, and maybe you can still agree to it now, that Paulo is clear cut better than Franz. We obviously know that, but there was a moment where you saw Franz and Jalen still getting it done, still getting wins done, and people really didn't see that as a possibility without Paulo. I remember when Paulo went down, Al and I, you and I, we looked at the schedule and we're just like, man, it's gonna be rough and it's gonna be hard for us to get out of that hole. But obviously, we got a chance to be able to see growth from Paulo and from Franz this past season, and even what the two of them were able to do for us in the playoffs. There's been a lot of talks about, you know, their framework and how, you know, we're building our blueprint and our team very similar to what Boston's building or have built with both Tatum and Brown. But Al, when you take a look at Paulo and Franz's growth this season, I mean, how confident are you that they are able to get better? Obviously, there's been some concerns with Franz and his shooting, and Paulo and his efficiency, like you just mentioned, Steven. But you know, what would you say would be the key thing that you would say about Paulo and Franz for the season?
I mean, the question is, do we know that we have stars in them? And I mean, there's no doubt about it. I think seeing these guys go against the Celtics knowing that we had no other option, right? They knew we didn't have a KCP that was playing well, a Wendell that could really contribute offensively, AB, JI. So it really became just Paulo and Franz offensively against the Celtics. And to see them, you know, Paulo put up 29 points a game, Franz 25 points a game, almost 26, while not having a three-point shot. That's the crazy part. Like, he's doing this, not making three-pointers. He said today on his exit interviews that is his main focus. Work on his jump shot, his form. He knows the weakness of his. That's his focus this offseason. So if he can come back a little bit better next year, a little more reliable from three-point range, you add to that Apollo should be averaging 28, 29 next year. This guy's at 23 and 22 years old. We sometimes forget that because they play so well. The future is extremely bright. I have zero doubts, zero concerns with these two guys. The Orlando Magic are going to build around these guys, and they're doing the right thing. The future, again, is extremely bright. I have no doubt that these guys will at some point be all-stars at the same time. Paulo should be an all-NBA player as soon as next season. He should have been this year had he not gotten hurt. So I think from that perspective, we're safe. It's now all about what do we do to build a team that's a winning team around them, specifically shooting and offense, because unfortunately, you cannot have a 30th offense in the NBA, 30th in shooting percentages, 30th in three-point shooting, and expect to do much in the playoffs. You got to score the ball at some point, which we'll talk about that plenty here coming up in the podcast. But when you ask me, Paulo, Franz, I think we're good there. Add a healthy Jalen and a healthy Mo Wagner. That's a great start.
Yeah, during a lot of the exit interviews today, I heard some similarities on some of the things that Jeff, Paulo, and Coach Mose were saying, and surprisingly, they all three of them spoke in regards to Corey Joseph, and not necessarily Corey Joseph the person, but more Corey Joseph the type of player, that they Coach Mose relied on heavily in the second half of the season, where it was a point guard who has championship experience, who was able to set the floor, set the table, get players involved, a playmaker, someone that can stretch the floor a little bit. And we know in the beginning of the season, Paulo asked for that specific type of player. So, Steven, when you take a look at the offseason, you take a look at kind of where our roster is now, what do you think the Magic need in order for us to be able to take the next step? We're going to talk more in detail in just a moment about what Jeff Weltman said exactly. But before we get into it, just from an overall outlook, what do the Magic need?
Well, first off, I'm going to just be like a little sad for a second because we didn't get to see the plan in full this year, right? The plan was to see Jalen Suggs as one of the primary ball handlers in a lineup with Paulo and Franz. And we saw that for 6 games. And one of those games was a one-off, like 2 months after the fact, with Paulo and Franz coming back from injury. And I still don't necessarily think Jalen Suggs is like a primary point guard. But when you put him in context next to Paulo and Franz, who are also really good ball handlers and decision makers with the ball in their hands, like I still think there's more left to see what is there with the 3 of them as the ball handlers in that starting lineup. And we didn't get to see that. And so, like, I know Paulo asked for a ball handler, a primary ball handler to set the table, but we never got to really see what that looked like with Suggs next to them two, trying to like play that out and grow through that. Like there's that development didn't get to try like very well with that. And like, yeah, Jalen Suggs playing not next to Paulo, or like only having one or the other, not having both, is a different story than him as a ball handler next to 2 other phenomenal ball handlers. So like, and we did see growth with Jalen as a ball handler. He was a much better decision maker, running through multiple different types of pick and roll sets, like double drags and things like that. We got to see him navigate those types of things a lot better than he did in years past. And I think he still has room to grow in that area. Doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be like a Chris Paul type of point guard, but like, can he be at least a ball handler that would work well enough for that starting unit? And then kind of circling back to your actual question, Anna's like, what do I think the Magic need? I think when I look at the second unit and I see like the 6th man and the option is Anthony Black, Gary Harris, or Cole Anthony, I was like, that's where you have to figure that out, right? Like Anthony Black, he's still super raw in his ball handling skills and his decision making. He's going to be another year or 2 away for us to tell if he's got it. So like, get that better ball handling in the Gary Harris and Cole Anthony type of position, and get like a super 6th man that can be a scorer off the bench, but also be staggered really heavily with the starters, and be that playmaker to kind of balance out stagnation with Jalen Suggs and blending lineups. And I think that goes so far to getting that table setter than just saying, nah, we got 6 games of Jalen Suggs with Paulo and Franz. Let's throw that aside, make him a shooting guard, and bring in another point guard to run the starting unit. Like, I just don't think that's like really fair yet. Because I still think there's a little bit more juice to give with that, with the development of Jalen Suggs kind of in that role. And so I like my priority number 1 going into the offseason is upgrade the 6th man guard position that can be a guard that can be a playmaker for the second unit and the first unit with staggering lineups. but as well as like a scoring threat that can shoot off, that can shoot 3-pointers at a respectable rate. Like that's kind of like that would go so long and so far to helping this Magic offense and help getting Paulo into his place. Like imagine Jalen Suggs goes down next year and instead of Cole Anthony or Corey Joseph, you have name any point guard we've been talking about this whole year that we wished we had on this team. Anthony Simons, Colin Sexton, Kobe White, Jordan Poole, whatever point guard we want to dream about kind of filling that super 6-man role, or even some of the ones that people are dreaming about to fill in as a starter, like add any of those next to Jalen Suggs in the second unit. And I feel like, dude, that is just putting fuel to the fire and moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that there's a problem when Jalen Suggs goes down and you end the season for a majority of the games skipping Cole Anthony, skipping Anthony Black, and then putting Corey Joseph as your starting point guard.
Yeah,
that's a problem, right?
absolutely.
So obviously upgrades need to happen. Some of the words that we've heard from Jeff Weltman say is, it's time that we improve offensively, even if we have to sacrifice on the defensive end. And I think that these are all things that everyone has been saying for a long time. So getting into some of the comments that Jeff Weltman said, just a quick overlook on some of his comments. Jeff Weltman took some time to say that the moves he tried to make at the trade deadline were for expiring contracts. He didn't think that it was worth depleting some of their assets for a player that ultimately was going to be a rental player. He went on to say that he didn't regret not making any moves or deciding not to make any moves at the trade deadline. He also said that the Magic are going to be more aggressive and all options are on the table this summer. He went on to mention that we are now battle tested. We're ready. Let's put our foot on the gas and go. It's time to walk into the next phase of our team. I think that we're kind of ready to turn the page on our rebuild and enter the next stage and look through a more win now lens. It's time for us to look at how we win today and not tomorrow. And then he said, what we need is proven shot making, proven offensive play. Clearly, we have to get better offensively. Clearly, we have to shoot the ball better. That's the goal. Proven offense and offense help is what we'll be looking for. This team needs some added vet. And I'm not talking Corey Joseph. I'm not talking Robin Lopez. I'm not talking Joe Ingles. This team definitely needs an upgrade in terms of their shot making, their veteran support. Al, when you hear some of the comments that Jeff Weltman said, there's been times where Jeff Weltman comes out and he does these press conferences where he's kind of talking in code, right? He's saying a whole lot of stuff and says nothing all at the same time, right?
Yep.
That was not the case this time. This time he was very clear with his intentions, without literally saying, Cole Anthony, we're going to upgrade your position. It's time for you to go, right? Jonathan Isaac, thank you for your service. Wendell Carter, so on and so forth, right? But what was your overall outlook on what Jeff Weltman came out and said that, we're going to sacrifice defense for offense and we need to upgrade this team to win now?
I mean, my reaction was the same that Coach Mosley got when he was asked, there were some talks earlier with Jeff Weltman and he's talking about replacing some defense for offense. How do you feel about that? He cut off the reporter by saying, yes, like I'll be okay with that. Dude, finally, right? Finally. So two things for me. We're finally getting Jeff Weltman to not seem like a robot, that it's like an AI machine that has scripted answers every time. And no matter what you ask him, he says a lot of words, but ultimately you're like, what did he just say? Like, I cannot read what he just said. Like, I cannot make sense of his answer. That's been him for 7-8 years in Orlando. This is the first time where I actually listened to his interview twice. And I'm actually like, okay, I see the vision. I see the plan. I can expect some moves that will lead to X, Y, and Z. What is that at this moment? Offense. We've wanted this. Dude, I can remember back in 2017 when we traded for Serge Ibaka and all these moves that we made. And I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, all we're doing here is just adding defenders, length. It's been the same thing primarily for almost 9 years that I've been living in Orlando. It's adding defensive guys that have long arms, that are tall. Great. Amazing. For the first time ever, he's saying, we got to change our approach a little bit and go after guys who can score the ball. So I'm really excited. I think that this is what we all wanted to hear. So I'm very impressed that he came out and said it on exit interviews. Now, at the draft, 2 months after the season ended, right after we lose, saying, hey, we recognize our weaknesses. We got to improve these things. And I like the fact that Coach Mosley seconded that message and said, you know what? Yes, we need to do that. I'm excited for that. Paulo, I'm excited to be in Orlando long term. But guess what? I'm also excited for the moves that Jeff Weltman's saying that he's going to make this offseason. So a lot of things to be excited for. We don't know what this all means. We got to see how things play out. And I got to say, too, I am actually very thankful that he told us the truth about the trade deadline. He said it. I misspoke. People misunderstood what I meant by saying that teams are trying to basically squeeze us and put us in a corner at that time. That wasn't really the case. They just felt like, and it makes sense now, like if I'm going to trade for a guy that's an expiring contract, why trade a first or 2 firsts for a guy that may walk in 2 months? Again, a rental. It
So
would
maybe win
sense.
1 or 2 more games in the first round and still get bounced.
Exactly. So I think when you look back at it, you're like, all right, I see the vision, right? And now that we're hearing the comments along with that, it makes a lot more sense. So in Jeff we trust, man. In Jeff we trust once again. We have a big summer ahead of us. Paulo's about to get paid. Franz and Jalen are getting paid. So we don't have time to mess around, man. I know they're young still, Paulo and Franz, but they're stars in this league and they deserve a chance to compete at a high level starting next year. So in one word, I am excited.
Yeah, you got Paulo that's extension eligible. And listen, it's what you want. It's what everyone wanted Jeff Weltman to say, right? There's again a lot of times where he's doing a lot of talking, a lot of sniffling, but really not anything that we can take with us where we feel great about it. Like this was not the way that people wanted the season to end. But hearing this in the off season, and we have a close friend of ours that was hoping that the Magic got swept because it's forcing the front office to do something, and I understand that sentiment 100%. And now it feels like we're going to do it. Now we have another friend, shout out to you, Yachty, that says it's great that he said all these things, but actions need to match.
Yeah.
And that is 100% what it is. Like, it sounds great. I like what I'm hearing. Now let's get this rolling. And the Magic have we have a lot of things that we have to look forward. We have a lot of things to look forward to in terms of the off season now. We have players who are becoming free agents. We have players who are contract extension eligible. We have obviously have our draft picks. So Steven, before we get into the off season outlook of our cap situation, give me some thoughts on what Jeff Weltman said, and then kind of break us down contract wise how we're looking.
Yeah. I'm down for all that, man. So I'm excited to see it, right? We have seen Jeff Weltman be aggressive a couple times, but not too often, right? Last summer, we saw him be aggressive in free agency and in an attempt to address shooting and defense. And, the shooting didn't work out. KCP, he deserves a lot of criticism for a lot of things this year. But the thought process behind the original signing was to double down on defense while getting someone who is a 40% shooter for 4 years in a row on 5 attempts per game from 3. That should help the offense in theory. I don't think anyone would have projected that he would have had the worst shooting season of his entire life. Not even any other team that would have gone for him. Probably not even the Denver Nuggets that didn't offer him a fair contract, right? That was unexpected. But there was an aggressive mindset to make improvement there, despite the attempt not working at this point. And so I'm ready to see that continued thought process going into this offseason. Like Al, you were mentioning, and Ant, like you guys both said, and we all heard the interviews today, he's ready to get proven offensive players, even if that means sacrificing some of our defense. And what I also thought was interesting in his interview, he talked about with the cap situation, it's not adding, it's swapping at this point. And what that means is I'm going to talk about Jonathan Isaac for a second because he's kind of an easy one to pick on at this moment. He is a very nice defensive player. He had a little bit of struggles this year. Wasn't like that all dominating force that we saw him the year before, but he was still a very good defender most nights. But he's a negative on offense. Like, he's not even just neutral. He's a negative. You can't rely on him for anything. If anything, you're like playing 4-on-5 offensively because he's not giving anything whatsoever offensively. And so, like, that's someone I look at right away where it's like, we can probably do better there to balance out the roster. We'll sacrifice some of the elite defense that we have. We're going to get in someone who's probably not a shitty defender, but maybe not an all-star defender like Jonathan Isaac is, but that can actually put the ball on the floor and score the ball a little bit, right? Like Gary Harris at this point in time, another perfect example of that. But it's like, they're not going to be able to just bring in that offensive player and keep the defense. It's going to be a swap. And and you asked me to talk about a little bit of the offseason cap situation, right? So I'll get right into it. The Magic, as it stands right now, including the first round draft picks, 16 and 24, if they were to draft those players, those salaries, it's projecting the Magic to have a $207 million cap sheet, their salary floor for the team going into next year. That's including picking up team options and stuff like that. The first apron is $195 million. So they are $12 million going into the first apron, which puts all sorts of restrictions on teams' ability to make moves. You have to match salary exactly within that type of range. There's just a whole bunch of types of restrictions going into that. And this team is not ready to be in a first apron team. They're unproven. They haven't won a road game on the playoffs yet. You're not a first apron paying team if you haven't won a road game yet. That's irresponsible. So they have to get under the tax or under the first apron while also improving the offense. They're going to have to turn down some team options. You have a team option on Gary Harris, Caleb Houston, Corey Joseph, and even Mo Wagner. Those are all expiring contracts. Even Cole Anthony is an expiring contract to an extent because he's got 2 more years left on his contract, but the next year is a team option. So a team like the Magic or another team you trade him to, they can decline that next year and he could come off the salary floor, the salary books this year. So they're going to have to use some of those types of contracts to go into it. Bobby Marks, on his breakdown of the team, he said the Magic have the golden contracts with salaries where you're between $2 and $22 million. And those contracts are so great because you can fill them in so many different ways in trades and movability, even if the player's like a negative asset. Like, the Magic also have like 7 first round picks in the next like 5 years and I think 11 second round picks over the next 5 years. So it's like they have a lot of good ammunition with draft capital to make good aggressive moves. And I'm going to spin it back and then I'll pass it off after my long lecture. But if you look at how aggressive they were last offseason with their free agent cap space, they signed KCP really early into that first day of free agency. Yep. It was like within the first couple of hours, it was announced that they came to an agreement. If they go in with that mindset into this offseason with trades, not thinking they're going to bring this team to a contending level next year, but can you go from a first round team to a solid second round team regardless of injuries next year? Like, that should be the goal, bare minimum. Not can you go from a first round exit to a title contender next year? That's just unrealistic. But can you get to that next step really solidly and be aggressive about it? I feel really good. I feel really good about it. Like our friend Yachty and all of you guys said, we have to see it because we have had hopes that have fallen through. But I still think in the grand scheme of things, Jeff Weltman's done more positive than negative for this team. And despite the flaws that he has had and some of the major misses that he's had, I think he's done more positive, and I'm ready to see what he does. I'm ready to see it.
Listen, he's fired that weapon before. We've seen him get active. Let's not pretend and act like he hasn't pulled the trigger. He's done it.
He's tried.
It feels like it,
for sure.
Yeah. It feels like it's been a while since he's done anything major, and that's where I think that people are forgetting that he's he's been aggressive, right?
Especially major that's worked out. Like he did something
Yeah,
major last summer. It just didn't work out, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we're still reaping the benefits from it, from the Aaron Gordon trade that we're going to get from this upcoming draft. So obviously we know that he can get some stuff done, and we've seen him be able to push this team forward through acquisitions. Now, with that being said, you have the 16th, the 25th, the 46th, and the 57th pick in the draft. You mentioned team options: Corey Joseph, Gary Harris, Caleb Houston, Mo Wagner. I'll give it to you. I mean, you hear the words that Jeff Weltman said. You see the facts in front of us in terms of what we aren't able to do, who's available, who we can move, their contracts. What do you expect in the Magic to do when you hear these words from Jeff? Do you hear making a big splash, a big move, or do you hear making small changes, bringing in more vets, small contracts? Like what is it that you're expecting for Jeff Weltman to really do with this roster going into the offseason?
I think I want to start it with the fact that he said anything is on the table. I think I'll take that as Paulo, Franz, Jalen are not going anywhere. Everyone else, we don't know. So if that is the approach they're taking, I don't know if that means a significant trade happens, but we might get a substantial improvement. By that I mean, like Steven mentioned, we need a 6-man that we can depend on, a guy that can score 20 off the bench. Think of a younger, maybe more proven Terrence Ross. Imagine that guy in our team with the current roster that we have.
Monk is the first person that comes to my mind.
Exactly. That's a guy that many of us wanted last year. And he chose to go back to Sacramento some way, somehow. We were like, what happened there? We thought he was coming here. Sacramento's kind of a mess right now. They have a new coach. They have a new front office. They have a bunch of stuff going on in Sacramento right now. Is he a guy that we can go and approach and say, hey, we got KCP. Can we trade some picks and some decent contracts for a guy like Malik Monk? And now a year later, we end up with KCP and Malik Monk in Orlando.
Or just pause real quick. Like, let's say Sacramento doesn't want KCP because he's got a couple more years. Do you want cap flexibility next summer? Cool, because we can provide you multiple different types of contracts that will come off your books in 12 months, and you'll have $20,000 in cap space next summer. Because the Magic have multiple options, you know?
So I think that was what kind of my thinking. Like you can kind of look back a year later now and say, hey, we got KCP and we also get Malik Monk in our team if we make the right trades. I also think guys like, I love him to death, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's dangled out there. Anthony Black, I mean, proven, great kid, a lot of talent, but he's if you ask me, the perfect guy to dangle out there and say, hey, we have a young guy, great defender, offensively, not so much just yet, but great potential. Can we get something good for him in return? But hey, by the way, take Wendell Carter with him or take J.I. with him and some picks and give us X player. So I don't think significant changes take place. I don't think like a Trae Young comes to Orlando. I don't think a Devin Booker comes to Orlando. If they do, trust me, I'll be parading in downtown Orlando drunk by midday because I'll be so happy. I don't think that happens, but I do think there'll be some fun moves to bring in some guys that they can depend on. That was the key word. Some dependable offensive guys that they want to add to our team. So who are those guys? Again, Malik Monk comes to mind. You think about guys like Anthony Simons from Portland. You think about guys like, who's another big one out there that we keep talking about? Jordan Poole comes to mind. It's a guy that is their scorer.
Colin Sexton.
Colin Sexton.
Less sexy name, but a good guy that would help, in my opinion.
Steven, you love Colin Sexton.
I'll break it down.
That is your guy.
There's reasons.
We'll see what happens. But I do think we'll see some good changes. I think we'll be happy come June 30th before free agency starts. We'll see some good trades. And don't forget, guys, like the draft is in June 25th. So they have to make some big decisions in a month and a half. It's not like we have 3 months to wait. This is going to be happening quick here. But yeah, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but do you think that we see maybe a big trade, meaning like a Trae Young come to Orlando? Or do you think more in line with me? It's more like, I wouldn't call it marginal moves, but moves that make a difference, but not necessarily a 3rd star or 4th star just yet.
I mean, my biggest issue with the Magic, and obviously this year is a little different because of injuries, but like I've always felt like Coach Moses' rotation needs to be brought down so much, right? A little like less, like keep it in the 10, like no more than 10, maybe 11 on the occasion, but you playing 12, 13 guys is a little overkill. So in my opinion, can you make a move like that? Steven, you'd be able to tell me more. You're more of uh the salary whiz with the aprons, but uh the Magic need to do something. We've said it. We've had this debate before, Steven. I want the Magic to do a sexy move, something that people can get hyped about and get excited about. But at the same time, you're also right. It needs to be something that's smart, that makes sense, not just today but tomorrow as well. Like, we have to remember that Franz and Paulo, they're still so young, and whatever moves they make, we're not going to make it to the NBA Finals next season. It may not be the season after that, but what does this team look like 3-4 years down the line? That's going to be the most important thing. Like, the main move may not be this season. It may be the season. It may be next season, season after that. So the Magic need to make sure that they find a way to upgrade, but still maintain some level of flexibility. But what can happen is a Magic standing pat and drafting 4 rookies. Like that. That's just something that cannot happen with this team, right?
Yeah, I mean, like the big swing thing, let's just talk about for a second. Like, there's been so many people that have said, Magic, go get Trae Young. Magic, go get, Ja Morant, whatever the sexy name on the market is. You have, it would work for like a season, and then Paulo's extension would kick in, and then you'd be a second apron team, and then you'd have one more year after that until the second apron tax is just going to force the team to break up. And so, and like, we're looking at the Boston Celtics right now. Like, Shams literally came out today and said, yeah, expect the Boston Celtics to look different next year because they cannot stay a second apron team 2 years in a row, or 3 years in a row, because they technically were one last year as the CBA was like soft rolling in. And that's what it's planned to do. It's planned to eliminate teams from paying obnoxious amounts of money just to maintain talent forever and just be this dominating force financially, like, that just can just spend their way to championships. It's to even the playing field. You do that move today, that means in 3 seasons, when Paulo and Franz are really at their prime, you probably can't keep all 3 max players. Like, one of them's going to have to go. So why do that now when it just feels premature? So to me, the big swing is like, that's like a home run move you do in 2 seasons, right? But to me, the moves you're doing now sets you up to do that move again in 2 more seasons when the team has proven that they're actually ready to go get a championship. Because, like, you go get a Trae Young this season, like, they're still probably not a contention team next year, right? There's just some things that have to happen. I mean, like, maybe they are, I don't know. But, like, I think it's more like, go get that Malik Monk to improve the second unit and be a starter, even, whatever the case may be. Go get that really nice offensive guard that can be a pull-up threat, a dynamic scorer for that offensive unit, while also being a nice ball handler and passer. Improve the defense or the offense in the second unit. Like, obviously get Mo healthy, but then go find someone that's better than Jonathan Isaac offensively that can actually maybe hit a shot. Anthony Black, if you're not going to make that step, like, sorry, you might have to go too. But obviously you got to move off of guys like Jonathan Isaac and Gary Harris and Cole Anthony and even someone like Goga. Like, you got to just find some more offensively talented players and get 2 or 3 of those guys. I think, baseball terms, home run would be a max player. Go get some guys that's going to get you on second and third base. Go get those types of guys. And then go get your home run swing in 2 seasons, right? Once you prove that you can be a competitive, like, Eastern Conference final team.
And Bobby Marks, he said this during his when he was doing the videos for the Outlook for the Orlando Magic for the offseason, where he talks about, like, these contracts, they're getting expensive. So when you're drafting some of these rookies, the Jeff Howards, the Anthony Blacks, the Tristan Da Silvas, like, the Magic have to hit on those because of how their contract is structured and how much their cost is for the team. So the Magic can't afford to have to draft in the future whoever they add onto the team, a player that can contribute, because again these contracts are going to end up getting as expensive as they are. So man, the offseason can go so many different ways, and Jeff Weltman is going to have his hands full trying to navigate those waters and figure out what the correct direction is for this team.
And guys, like listeners, like stay tuned. We're going to be covering this stuff really deeply. Like I'm going to have a cap expert on, like Keith Smith, probably the next couple of weeks. And we'll go deep into what is really going to happen with the Magic, what their abilities are, and what it would mean to be a second apron team or a first apron team for the Magic the next year versus what it would mean for them to be under the apron. Like stay tuned to what's going on with HQ, because we're going to get deep into that. We'll have episodes all about free agent targets, if we can use the MLE, a mid-level exception. We'll have episodes about trade targets. We'll have guests on throughout the offseason talking about a lot of this kind of stuff. So stay tuned. We're going to keep you informed and educated.
Yeah, and just because the season is over doesn't mean that the content is stopping, right? So a lot of things to look forward into the offseason. At some point before the NBA draft, we know that there is going to be a Magic rebrand happening, logos, new jerseys. So that's definitely on the way. Mid-June, you're looking at teams who can begin negotiating with their own free agents. June 25th, you got the NBA draft. June 30th, teams can begin negotiating with free agents. Early July, you got Summer League. August, you have the season schedule release. And then late September, training camp starts. So just another cycle of good old off season where it's just as exciting as the in-game season. So a lot of things happening. Make sure you're tuning in, checking in. If you haven't checked out Steven and his podcast on the Close-Up, make sure you do that on everywhere where you are checking out our podcast as well. On that note, Steven, appreciate you joining us. Al, thank you for your patience with my technical issues. It's a wrap for us, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Magic.
For all the latest Magic news and updates, visit OrlandoMagicHQ.com and follow us on Instagram at Orlando Magic HQ and on Twitter at OMagicHQ. Also, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your favorite listening platform.